What's up, guys? Wanted to come to you and talk to you about all this buzz going on about Lando. So, I haven't seen Solo yet. Still planning on going to see it this week. So I'm pretty super excited about that. Uh, I have been boycotting it, but I'm gonna go see it because I love Star Wars. Um, Hopefully it's good. I've heard mixed reviews. It's hard to. I've also been trying to avoid spoilers and all, but yeah, I'm really excited. So, but one of the big things that is kind of worrisome is that they came out as like, oh, well, Lando's pansexual now. I'm like, why? Why would you do that? They're like all in there, gender inclusive, whatever nonsense. Um, their diversity agenda, and I've mentioned before in my Green Lantern video that I don't care for forced diversity. But I wanted to come to you and talk to you about why I don't think that Lando being a pansexual works for Star Wars, but it might work for Star Trek. So there's fundamentally Star Trek and Star Wars are different. I love both. Some people are either or. Honestly, Star Wars is better to me. I've always liked Star Wars more. I like the universe better. I think it's more closely attuned to reality, how the future might look in reality than Star Trek. But I still love Star Trek, and eventually I'll do a video about Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I've watched all but the newest one, and as soon as it hits Netflix or whatever, I will be watching the new one. But yeah, so I love both. I love both franchises. I've seen all the movies for both. So I'm excited. I'm excited. I love both. Here's the difference. Fundamentally, Star Trek asks those questions. What are we? Who are we? What does it mean to be a human? And so Star Trek fundamentally asks those questions, and it's all about what they are, finding out what science is, what it means to be human, what human nature is like. And so it fits perfectly. So you have aliens and people hooking up with aliens and all these kind of things, like, and it's awesome, like, that they would go that far and answer that question. So every generation of Star Trek has somebody answering or asking the question, well, what does it mean to be human? So, example, you have Spock in the original series. So Spock is half human and half Vulcan, and so throughout the whole series, he's trying to get rid of his human nature and put on his Vulcan nature because he's ashamed of his human nature. And so in doing that, he has to find out what is and isn't human and put that off of himself. And so every time he acts human-like, he tries to distance himself from those emotions, from those actions. And in doing that, it shows us what is human, what is human nature. And then in the next season, you have Data. And Data is trying to do the opposite. He's trying to become more human because he's made in the image of humanity. And so in all the actions that he does, trying to become more and more human-like, he shows us what it means to be human. And in contrast, when he fails, it shows us, oh, that's what human nature is like. Because he's not able to do that because he's not a human. He's not really a human. And yet sometimes he comes off the most human character of all. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Star Wars is not like this. Star Wars, my friend Lewis, who I did the last video with, we were talking, and that's kind of how this subject came up. Star Wars is fundamentally different. Star Wars doesn't really ask the questions of what is human nature. Star Wars kind of assumes an evil human nature. Um, and where Star Trek starts off in this utopian world, this utopian future, Star Trek starts utopian. Star Wars starts in a dystopian future, kind of like Wild Max or whatever that Mad Max that movie is that I never watched, but everybody says it's good. Or like, the what's it called? Uh, the zombie show, The Walking Dead. I watched some of that. Anyways, so you're living in this world where anything can happen. Like, death is right around the corner. You're literally running from death, is what you're doing. And that's what Star Wars is kind of based in. Like, they're just trying to survive. Like, they don't ask. The only question that Star Wars really asks is what is good and evil. And there's a huge discussion about that. I mean, because every story is going to ask a question on its readers. What is this? What what matters in life? Every story asks a question, and good stories, and they answer that through the story, or they give you some kind of journey as finding the answer. Star Wars asks the question, what is good and evil? And so it's fundamentally a battle between the light and the dark, the good and the evil. And so it's very clear cut what is and isn't good, what is and isn't evil. And I feel like that's why people didn't enjoy the original trilogy. I mean, not the original trilogy, sorry. Everybody loved that. The sequel, or the prequel trilogy, because it was a lot murkier. It was hard to tell what was good and evil. Now, I know people didn't like because the story writing was bad. Everybody hated Jar Jar, or at least some people hated Jar Jar. Some of the acting is rough, and I say this because of the writing. And I'll give you that. Totally true. I love the prequels. I'll defend them all day, but I understand why people like them. I mean, hate them. But problem, or they still basically answer the same question: what is and isn't good? What is good and evil? And so there, throughout this, you're like, there's a promised one, and you have Darth Maul, who shows up in Episode 1, and you're like, oh, this is obviously evil, and what is the right thing to do in that situation? But in an ultimate sense, they're trying to survive. They don't have time to really think about other questions. They're really just trying to survive. Things happen, and that's where you have like this opening for, if you have to, like weird sexual stuff. People like different aliens and stuff, and whatever. But but it's not really open. It's not really works well for you to explore it. And I'm not saying that it should or shouldn't be explored. I just think a better place for stuff like that to be explored is Star Trek. Because Star Trek asks those questions. What does it mean? What does it mean to be like this? Star Trek is way better to answer that, and it can still be really good writing. There's some weird stuff in Deep Space Nine. I love that show, but it's very weird. Like, it does all sorts of weird stuff, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's different. I love it. It's great. You have the original the original series. Sorry, I'm Star Wars man. The original series. You have the Next Generation, and they're very clear cut and dry, and they do like expand a bunch of stuff. But when you go to Deep Space Nine, it's just weird. Everything about it is weird. It's a weird place. You're not on a ship. The characters are super strange, and it's kind of unique like that. And that's why one reason I love Deep Space Nine is because it's just different. it's different than anything you would expect from a Star Trek series. And maybe that's why people didn't care for it as much. I don't know. And if that's why you didn't like Deep Space Nine, you're really missing out because it's good. It's really good. I like Voyager too. But anyways, but Star Trek is tailored to asking the deep questions about existence and who we are. But Star Wars is not tailored toward that. I could say like extended universe. You could probably make the argument that in the extended universe, you could ask those questions, and it's true. That's very true. But I don't think the big movies that are trying to get the feel of the original trilogy, I don't think that's a good place for that. I just want a good story. That's all I care about. Personally, as a Christian, I don't like all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't bother me as much if it's a good story. And I don't think like the main series is the best place for it because of the nature of the story. I have been reading Ahsoka, and I was kind of disappointed that they did some of the stuff that they did in the book, but it was a better place for it. It was a better place. It was a better place for some of those questions than it would have if it had been in movie form. And so different modes of storytelling are better suited for that stuff than others. So I think it's possible to do some talk about that kind of stuff if it were more in a different mode than like trying to get the feel of the original trilogy, because the original trilogy didn't care about that kind of stuff. It might have had some strange characters who did strange stuff, but it's not that they made a deal about it. And honestly, that's one problem I have with a lot of the forced diversity is they make a big deal about it. Like, don't make a big deal about it. Just make the character like that, and that's it. Honestly, I think most people probably wouldn't want to watch stuff like that. Another thing is I hate changing characters, and I've talked about that, and I don't want to go into this in this video, but I have talked about that. I just wish people would stop changing fundamental things about historic characters. Write a new character. Anyways, but I think fundamentally, Star Wars is not as well suited for like a delving into pansexual stuff as Star Trek is, because we've had some odd characters in Star Trek that did all sorts of different stuff. I don't think there's any like really normal characters in Star Trek. They're all very strange. They do weird stuff. There's some normal characters in there, but anyways, it's that the fundamental difference that I'm trying to get at is that Star Trek asks those questions. So it's perfect for the series because fundamentally the series asks the questions that the writers are trying to get at, whereas Star Wars does not ask those questions. So it's not as good story writing for you to throw in a question that's not really asked by the series, if that makes sense. Because Star Wars isn't focused on what sexual orientation you are. They're focused on survival. People are attracted to who they're attracted to in Star Wars. Whether that be a human or an alien. It's not. It just happens. It's not like asking that question. It's just assuming, that people are the way they are, and then it moves on. but it doesn't make a big deal about what orientation people are. And Star Trek can, and that's the beauty of Star Trek. Like, it's able to do whatever you want it to, ask whatever question you want to about the nature of humanity, and it talks about good and evil too. Don't get me wrong, but I think uh, more than asking what good and evil is in a grand scale, it's asking about good and evil in like the micro scale, individually. Your actions, are they good and evil? Like, your nature, is it good or evil? Stuff like that. So, and that's why I love Star Trek. Like, it just asks those questions. So, anyways, let me know what you think. You can tell me. Do you like Star Wars better, Star Trek better? Do you like both series, like I do? Do you see, like, maybe think I'm wrong about this? And if you are, let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. So, peace.